the sewers beneath the city. The city above was filled with light, but deep under its shining towers ran a world of shadows. In the sewers, the smell of rot and the sound of dripping water ruled the air. The tunnels stretched like endless veins, carrying away waste from the powerful who never cared to look down. And somewhere in those tunnels lived a man who was no longer whole. He had no legs, only the scars of war and betrayal. Once he was a soldier, strong and fearless, but now he crawled on his arms through mud and filth. His clothes were torn, his body thin, his eyes sharp with hunger and pain. For years, he had survived on scraps and stolen drops of water. Every day was a struggle, every night a battle to stay alive. He hated the darkness, but he had no choice. The city had forgotten him, and the world had thrown him away. Yet even as his body was broken, his spirit was not. He refused to surrender. He refused to die quietly in the filth. Every breath was a fight, every movement a promise that he was not finished. Sometimes he dreamed of walking again. He dreamed of the sky above the towers, the sound of wind on open ground. But every time he woke, he found himself in the same black water, the same crawling struggle. Still, he held on, because something inside him whispered that his story was not over. That night, something changed. The tunnel shook with a low hum, a sound that did not belong in the sewers. He pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding. Lights began to glow in the darkness, strange, cold lights, moving like living fire. He had seen soldiers before, he had seen machines, but this was different. This was otherworldly. Figures walked into the sewer, tall and strange, armored with designs that no human hand had made. Their helmets glowed, their weapons hummed with energy. He froze, expecting death, expecting their eyes to see nothing but a broken thing to be destroyed. But then she came, the queen. She stepped into the tunnel with a presence that made even the walls seem smaller. Her armor was not metal, but something alive, shifting and shining like starlight. Her eyes glowed with a sharp, alien fire, yet her face held a calm power. She was not human, but she was beautiful in a way that made the man's heart ache. Her voice carried through the tunnel, soft but strong. "What is this?" she asked her guards. They raised their weapons, ready to end him, but she lifted a hand and stopped them. She looked at him not with disgust, but with curiosity. He raised his head, meeting her eyes, and though his body was broken, his stare was unshaken. For a moment, the world was silent, only the dripping water between them. The queen stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You should be dead," she said, "yet you live in this place, crawling in filth." Her voice was neither cruel nor kind. It was curious, searching. The man's voice was hoarse, but he forced the words out. "I live because I refuse to die." Her eyes narrowed, studying him. He was nothing. No legs, no strength, no weapon. And yet, his words carried fire. She turned to her guards, who shifted uneasily under her gaze. Then she spoke again, her tone like a challenge. "If you could walk again, what would you do?" The man's chest rose and fell as he breathed hard. He thought of the years he had crawled, the nights of hunger, the silence of being forgotten. He clenched his fists, his eyes locked on hers. "I would rise again," he said, "and I would never crawl before anyone." The queen tilted her head, as if weighing the truth of his words. Something flickered in her expression, something no guard could understand. To her, he was more than a broken thing. He was a test, a possibility, perhaps even a weapon. In that dark sewer, beneath a city that had abandoned him, his fate shifted. The queen had found him, and with her arrival, his story had begun to change. The dripping water continued, the shadows trembled, and the broken man felt, for the first time in years, that destiny was watching him. The queen's strange curiosity. The queen did not turn away from the broken man. Her guards shifted uneasily, waiting for her order, but she said nothing. Instead, she walked closer, her steps light but commanding, each one echoing in the wet tunnels. The man dragged himself upright against the slimy wall, his eyes never leaving hers. Most humans would bow, tremble, or beg for mercy. But not him, even without legs, even covered in dirt and blood. He held her gaze like an equal. This alone made her pause. She was a ruler of 100 worlds, feared even by her own kind. Yet here was a human with nothing, and still he did not break. Her guards whispered, "He is nothing, Majesty. Let us finish him." But she silenced them with a glance. "No," she said softly. "There is something here." She studied his scars, his arms thick with the muscles of crawling through stone and filth for years. She saw his hunger, his weakness, but also the strange fire in his eyes. It was the fire of survival, the fire of one who had already lost everything yet refused to surrender. "Tell me," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "why do you still live? No food, no legs, no power, no family. Why?" The man spat into the dirty water and spoke through cracked lips. "Because dying would mean they won. The ones who left me here. The ones who thought I was finished. I live because I refused to give them victory." For the first time in many years, the queen felt a small flicker inside her chest. It was not pity. It was interest, curiosity, something rare for her. Here was a creature who should have been broken long ago, and yet he was still whole in spirit. This was not weakness. This was defiance. Her guards shifted again, uncomfortable with her silence. One finally dared to speak. "Majesty, he is worthless. His kind are fragile. His body is broken. Allow us to—" But before the words were finished, the queen's eyes flashed. "Fragile," she whispered, though her voice carried like thunder in the tunnel. "Fragile creatures do not crawl through death for years. Fragile creatures do not stare at me without fear." The guards lowered their heads, ashamed. The queen turned back to the man, her armor glowing faintly in the sewer's darkness. She crouched before him, so her eyes were level with his. "If you could walk again," she asked slowly, her words deliberate, "if I gave you new legs stronger than steel, faster than fire, what would you do?" The man's breath grew heavy, his mind filled with the memories of crawling, the nights of hunger, the endless pain of being left behind. His fists clenched, his eyes burned. He spoke with a voice that shook the tunnel. "I would rise again. I would stand where none could push me down, and I would never crawl before anyone." The queen studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, her glowing eyes searching his soul. Then a faint smile touched her lips, the kind that made her guards shift nervously. This was no longer chance, no longer curiosity. This was the beginning of something else, something dangerous. "Then perhaps," she whispered, "you are not finished after all." The broken man felt his chest tighten. For the first time in years, someone had not called him worthless, someone had not turned away. The queen rose to her full height, her shadow stretching across the tunnel walls like a storm. She turned to her guards, her voice sharp. "Take him. He belongs to me now." The guards hesitated, unsure why their queen would claim a crippled human. But they obeyed, for no one disobeyed the queen. The man was lifted roughly, his body weak, yet his spirit stronger than ever. As they carried him, he felt a strange pull in his chest. This was not rescue. This was not mercy. This was the start of something far greater. And in that dark sewer, the broken man's fate twisted once again. The queen had chosen him, not out of pity, but out of strange, dangerous curiosity. And curiosity, in her hands, could shape empires. The gift of new legs. The broken man was dragged from the sewers into a place he had never imagined. Through hidden tunnels they carried him, past doors of metal that opened with a hiss, past walls alive with strange lights that pulsed like veins. The air changed from the stench of rot to the clean, sharp smell of machines. He could feel the hum of power in the floor, like the ground itself was alive. When the guards finally set him down, he found himself inside a chamber glowing with alien fire. Tall machines rose like towers, their surfaces smooth and silver, their cores burning with colors that no human eyes were meant to see. Cables hung from the ceiling like the roots of some giant beast, moving as if they had a will of their own. The man's heart pounded, part fear, part wonder. The queen entered, her armor gleaming under the strange light. Her presence filled the chamber, and even the machines seemed to bow to her will. She stood before him, her voice calm but sharp. "You said you would rise again if given the chance," she reminded him. "Now I will test if your words are truth." He stared at her, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Why?" he rasped. "Why give this to me?" Her lips curved slightly, a smile that carried no warmth, only challenge. "Because I do not give," she said. "I claim. And I have claimed you. You are mine now. Your fate is mine to shape." At her command, the machines stirred. Arms of steel reached out, metal claws glowing with energy. The guards forced the man onto a table of black stone that rippled like water under his weight. He tried to struggle, but his broken body was too weak. Straps locked around his chest and arms, holding him still. The queen stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. "You will suffer," she said softly, "but if you endure, you will walk again. Not as you were, but stronger, faster, more than human." The man clenched his jaw, sweat running down his face. "Do it," he whispered. "I will not crawl again." The machines screamed to life. Needles pierced his flesh, wires sank into his bones. His body shook as alien fire burned through him. Every nerve lit with pain, every vein filled with light. It was as if the sewer filth was being burned out of him, leaving nothing but fire and steel. He screamed, his voice echoing through the chamber. But he did not beg for mercy, he did not break. The queen watched with cold eyes, measuring his strength. The guards turned away, unable to stomach the sight. Yet she never looked away, for this was her creation. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments. Time itself seemed to blur in that chamber. When at last the light dimmed, the machines pulled back. Smoke rose from his skin, and the straps released. The man lay still, his breath shallow, his body trembling. Then slowly he moved. He lowered his eyes and saw them. Legs, new, shining alive with power. Not flesh, but steel fused with muscle, metal wrapped with fire. They pulsed with energy, answering his thoughts, waiting for his command. His arms shook as he pushed himself up. For the first time in years, he placed his feet on the ground. The surface beneath him trembled, as if the earth itself knew what had been born. He rose, unsteady at first, then stronger with every breath. The chamber shook as he took his first step. The second step was faster, the third filled with force. He was no longer crawling, no longer broken. The queen's eyes narrowed, her voice low but sharp. "Good," she whispered. "You endure. You rise. You are mine now." The man stood tall, his chest heaving, his new legs humming like thunder beneath his skin. He looked at her, and though she was a queen, though she was alien, though she was power itself, he did not bow. Instead, he spoke with a voice that was both vow and defiance. "These legs may be yours, but my will is mine." The queen's lips curved again, this time with something more dangerous than a smile. Amusement. Her eyes glowed as she turned away. "Then let us see how far your will can carry you," she said. Her words hung in the chamber like a promise, or perhaps a warning. And the broken man, now reborn, knew that his fate was no longer his alone. He had been given legs of steel, but the path they would walk was one carved by both fire and shadow. What began in the sewers was only the first step. Now he walked into destiny, the first test. The chamber was silent, except for the steady hum of the man's new legs. Energy flowed through them like blood, every step making the ground echo. He stood tall for the first time in years, but the queen was not satisfied. Her gaze was sharp, her voice cold and commanding. "Strength means nothing until it is tested," she said. Her words struck the air like steel. The guards looked at each other, uneasy, knowing what was about to come. The man frowned, his hands curling into fists. "What test?" he asked, his voice low. The queen lifted her hand, and the floor of the chamber shifted. The black stone beneath them rippled and pulled away, revealing a pit. From the darkness below rose the sound of heavy breathing, chains rattling, claws scratching. One by one, her warriors emerged, tall, armored, and carrying blades that shimmered with alien fire. They surrounded him in a circle, their eyes glowing through their helmets. The man's breath slowed, his heart steady. He understood this was no gift, this was a trial. The queen's voice carried above them all. If you cannot stand against my warriors, then your new legs are wasted. Show me you are more than a cripple in steel. The warriors moved in, slow and cautious at first. The man raised his hands, unsure, his body adjusting to its new strength. The first warrior lunged, blade flashing in the air. Instinct made the man step aside, and the world exploded. With one movement, his legs shot him across the chamber faster than he imagined. The warrior's strike missed, hitting only air. The man landed, shocked by his own speed. But the warrior turned, blade swinging again. This time, the man's leg moved on its own. He kicked forward, metal met armor, and the sound was like thunder. The warrior flew back, crashing into the wall, his armor shattered. The man froze, staring at what he had done. The queen's eyes lit with something close to delight. Again, she commanded. The others came at him now, 2, then 3 at once. Their blades flashed, sparks flew as steel met steel. The man ducked, leapt, his legs carrying him higher than he thought possible. He landed behind them, spinning with a strike that shattered a helmet. Another warrior fell, then another. Pain surged through his arms and chest, but his legs moved with power that was unstoppable. Every kick broke armor, every step shook the chamber. He was no longer crawling in filth, no longer begging for scraps. He was standing, he was fighting, he was alive. The last warrior charged, larger than the rest, his blade twice the size. The man met him head-on. For a moment, the clash was fierce, blade against fist, sparks against fire. Then the man leapt, his new legs driving him into the air. He came down with a strike that crushed the warrior into the floor. The chamber trembled, the walls shook, silence followed. The broken man stood among the fallen, his chest heaving, sweat pouring. He looked at his hands, then at his legs, still glowing with power. He was breathing hard, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. The queen stepped forward, her voice smooth. "You are no longer the man who crawled in the dark," she said. "You are something else now." The guards whispered to each other, fear mixing with awe. They had seen many champions, but none rise so fast, none strike with such defiance. The queen's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. She had tested him, and he had not broken. Instead, he had risen. The man turned to her, his voice rough but unshaken. "You gave me these legs," he said, "but what I do with them will be mine." The queen's eyes narrowed, but her smile did not fade. "Yes," she whispered, "that is what makes you dangerous." And in that chamber of fire and steel, the first test was complete. The broken man was broken no longer. He was reborn, forged in pain, tempered by defiance. And the queen knew she had unleashed something that even she might not fully control. The queen's hidden plan. The warriors lay defeated across the chamber floor, their armor cracked, their pride broken. The man stood tall in the center, his breath heavy, his new legs glowing faintly with power. He had passed the test, but the queen's eyes were not satisfied. She had not brought him here for sport. She had brought him for purpose. Her steps echoed as she crossed the chamber, the sound sharp against the silence. Her guards stood back, uneasy, watching their queen move closer to the human who had just humbled her chosen fighters. She looked at him as if weighing a blade, not admiring, not pitying, but measuring. "You fought well," she said at last, her voice calm, "but strength is only a tool. The question is, what will you do with it?" The man's chest rose and fell, his fists clenched. He wanted to speak, but he also wanted to understand. Her words carried weight, as though they were the edges of a trap. He asked carefully, "Why me? Why give me this power?" The queen's smile was thin, dangerous. "Because I need what your kind carries," she said, defiance. "Will. The madness to keep fighting when the body should fail." She turned, her cloak of light shifting behind her like smoke. "My empire is at war," she continued, "and though I rule with fire, I cannot trust my own blood." Her words made her guard stiffen, but none dared speak. She glanced at them, her gaze sharp, then turned back to the man. "I see treachery in their eyes. I see ambition. I see weakness hidden behind loyalty. But you," she paused, studying him, "you have nothing. No home, no allies, no throne to steal. That makes you dangerous in a way my own kind are not." The man's jaw tightened, his mind racing. She was offering him something, but it was no kindness. It was a chain wrapped in gold, a destiny tied to hers. "You saved me for your war," he said slowly, his voice heavy. "Not saved," she corrected, her eyes gleaming. "Claimed. I claimed you because you are the blade I can shape, the champion my enemies will fear." Silence stretched in the chamber, broken only by the hum of the machines. The man looked at his legs, at the power burning beneath his skin. He thought of the years he had crawled, forgotten, left to rot. And now this queen spoke of glory, of war, of fear. But at what cost? Her voice cut through his thoughts, low and commanding. "You have two paths," she said. "Return to the shadows of the sewers. Crawl until death takes you, or stand beside me, wielding the strength I have given you. Rise as something greater than human." The man's hand shook, not from fear, but from the weight of choice. Her offer was not freedom. It was chains, but chains of power, chains that could pull him out of the dark. He met her gaze, his voice steady. "If I fight on my own terms. I am no slave." The queen tilted her head, her smile faint. "That is why you are useful," she whispered. "A slave obeys, but an equal inspires. My enemies will not fear another soldier. They will fear the human who rose from the sewers to stand at my side." Her words struck him harder than any blade. She was not asking him to be her servant. She was asking him to be her weapon. And though he hated her chains, a part of him burned with the thought of standing tall, of rising beyond the filth he once knew. For the first time, he saw not just survival, but destiny. The queen turned, her cloak whispering across the floor. "Decide quickly," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber, "for fate waits for no one." The man stood in silence, his breath heavy, his new legs humming like restless beasts. He had crawled in darkness for years, abandoned and broken. Now he stood on the edge of something vast and dangerous. He did not trust her, but he could not deny her, because deep down, he knew the truth. The queen's hidden plan was not just about her empire. It was about him, and if he stepped onto her path, his fate would no longer be his alone. The rise of the broken man. The chamber still echoed with the queen's words. Her plan was clear, her claim on him undeniable. Yet the man felt the fire in his chest grow stronger. For years he had been broken, left to crawl, forgotten by the world. Now, for the first time, he was not just surviving, he was becoming. The queen gave him no time to rest. His new legs had to prove more than strength. They had to prove endurance. Every day, her guards trained him, blades flashing, fists striking, their voices sharp with contempt. To them, he was still only a human, fragile, unworthy. But day after day, he rose. When he fell, he stood again. When he bled, he clenched his teeth and fought harder. The alien training halls shook with the sound of his strikes. His new legs carried him faster than their eyes could follow. One leap crushed a target of steel. One kick shattered a wall of stone. And with each victory, whispers grew louder. The broken man was no longer broken. It was not only his body that rose. It was his spirit. He remembered the years of crawling in the dark. He remembered hunger, filth, betrayal. And with every strike, every breath, he swore he would never bow again. He fought not for the queen, not for her empire, but for himself, for the man he refused to let die in the sewers. The queen watched from above, her eyes always sharp. She saw the change in him. What began as an experiment had become something far more dangerous. He was not her slave. He was not her pet soldier. He was a storm she had unleashed. And storms cannot always be controlled. One night, after endless battles, the queen summoned him to her throne. The chamber glowed with alien fire, shadows dancing across the walls. Her guards bowed low, but he did not. He stood before her, his chest rising and falling, his body scarred yet stronger than ever. Her voice carried across the hall. "You have risen," she said, "faster than any I have known." The man's eyes narrowed. "I rose because I had already been broken. Nothing you gave me was harder than what I survived before." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "That is why I chose you," she said. "That is why they whisper your name." And indeed they did. Among her soldiers, among her people, the story spread. The human who crawled in filth now stood taller than warriors of steel. Some called him cursed, others called him chosen. But all feared him. The queen leaned forward, her eyes glowing. "You are no longer a shadow," she said. "You are a symbol. To them, to me, to yourself. And symbols are what empires are built on." The man's chest tightened, his mind racing. A part of him hated her words, hated her chains. But another part burned with the truth. He was more than a survivor now, more than a cripple cast aside. He was rising, step by step, into something greater. That night, he stood on the balcony of the alien citadel. The city stretched below him, towers glowing, ships streaking across the sky. The wind hit his face, and for the first time in years, he felt free. Not because the queen had freed him, but because he had freed himself from the shadow of weakness. He clenched his fists, his eyes sharp. "I will never crawl again," he whispered, and the city seemed to tremble at his words. The rise of the broken man had begun, and though the queen claimed him as hers, deep inside he knew the truth. He was rising for himself, for the life stolen from him, for the destiny waiting ahead. And soon, the galaxy would know it too. Fate changed forever. The night was heavy with silence, but inside the queen's citadel, the air burned with tension. Whispers filled the halls, whispers of the human who rose from the sewers, whispers of the cripple who now stood taller than warriors of fire. The empire had seen him fight, had seen him endure, and now they watched to see what he would become. The queen summoned him once more. Her throne room was vast, its walls alive with light, its floor carved with symbols of power older than human history. Her guards lined the chamber, their eyes burning with both fear and envy. And in the center, the man stood, no longer broken, no longer crawling, but standing as though the weight of the world itself could not bend him. The queen's voice carried across the hall, sharp and calm. "Once you were nothing," she said, "a man abandoned to rot in filth. But now you stand here, forged in steel, tempered in pain, and risen in defiance." Her words echoed, but the man did not bow. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. "I stand," he answered, "because I chose to. You gave me legs, but it was my will that made me rise." Her smile was faint but dangerous. "Yes," she whispered, "and that is why you are mine." But he shook his head, his voice strong. "No, I am not yours. Not theirs. I am my own." The guards stirred, their weapons shifting, but the queen raised her hand and silenced them. For the first time, her eyes softened just slightly. "You are more than I expected," she said. "You are not a slave, not a pet, but a symbol. And symbols cannot be owned. They can only be followed." The hall grew quiet, her words falling heavy into the silence. And then, before all gathered, she stepped down from her throne. The queen of 100 worlds stood at the human's side, her voice ringing clear. "This man, once broken, once cast aside, now walks as my equal. Let all who see him know, the fate of this empire has changed." The chamber shook with the weight of her declaration. The guards bowed, the walls trembled, and the whispers grew into a storm. The broken man had become something greater than soldier, greater than survivor. He had become a legend. That night, he stood at the edge of the citadel, the stars burning above. His new legs hummed with power, his heart steady with fire. He remembered the sewers, the filth, the years of crawling, and he whispered into the wind, "I will never crawl again. I will rise, and the galaxy will rise with me." From that moment, His name spread beyond the city, beyond the empire. Some called him the Queen's champion, others called him the human king. But all knew him as the man who defied fate, a man who rose from nothing and changed everything. The Queen had found him broken in the shadows, but now he stood in the light, and his story, once buried in darkness, had become a fire that would never die. The fate of the broken man had changed forever, and with it, so had the fate of the galaxy.